Here comes the facts! Here are 50 amazing facts to blow your mind. Lawrence Turreau named himself professionally as Mr. T because he hated how his father, uncle, and brother who returned from Vietnam were disrespectfully called boy by white people. He wanted the first word out of everybody's mouth to be Mr. when speaking to him. In 1980, the FBI formed a fake company and attempted to bribe members of Congress. Nearly 25% of those tested accepted the bribe and were convicted. When Mr. Rogers heard his limo driver was going to be waiting outside while he was in a meeting, he asked the driver to come inside. On the way back, they passed the driver's home and Rogers asked if he could stop and meet his family. Rogers kept in touch with the driver for the rest of his life. 6 Georgia inmates out on work detail saved a deputy sheriff who collapsed unconscious. They could have taken his gun and fled with the work van, but used the deputy's phone to call 911. The sheriff's office gave the men a pizza party with homemade dessert and recommended a reduced sentence. An FBI whistleblower reported multiple problems in forensic cases. After years of the FBI seeking to ruin him, his claims were investigated and a report showed that forensic hair analysis was flawed or inaccurate 90% of the time. Frank Sinatra died on the night of Seinfeld's finale, and his ambulance made it to the hospital in record time because traffic was so light due to everyone watching the show. A Georgia teacher who bought a $400 travel insurance policy was rewarded $10,000 because she read the fine print of the contract. After reading to page 7, she saw a pays to read bit that said that the first to email and mention the fine print contest would win $10,000. Planned obsolescence is illegal in France. It's actually a crime to intentionally shorten the lifespan of a product with the aim of making customers replace it. In early 2018, French authorities used this law to investigate reports that Apple deliberately slowed down older iPhones via software updates. In 2006, a man in Portland, Oregon hired a hitman to kill his 51-year-old wife. However, his wife ended up killing the hitman with her bare hands. When she had her hands on his neck, she asked him, "Tell me who sent you here and I will call you an effing ambulance." Something tells me she didn't call him an ambulance. A very frugal librarian, the late Robert Morin, left millions of his life savings to the University of New Hampshire, where he worked as a librarian. Then the university spent $1 million of that money on a scoreboard for the new football stadium. While filming Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, they couldn't get a permit to film a scene. They filmed it anyway, and the studio hired a fall guy to claim to be the director and spend a night in jail. Eminem watched his daughter Haley get crowned homecoming queen from an empty classroom in the school because he didn't want to take attention away from her. When Rockstar first released Grand Theft Auto, they actually paid reviewers to negatively review the game in order to keep it controversial and therefore popular. They targeted right-wing newspapers to ensure moral outrage and drive the game to success. When Nintendo had a fall in revenue from its less successful Wii U, its CEO cut his pay in half for 5 months rather than blame workers. Judith Love Cohen, who helped create the abort guidance system which rescued the Apollo 13 astronauts, went to work on the day she was in labor. She took a printout of the problem she was working on to the hospital. She called her boss and said she finished the problem and then gave birth to Jack Black. United Airlines had assured a blind woman that they would help her off the plane, but only after the other passengers had gotten off. That was before forgetting about her and locking the plane up with her in it after everyone else had left. Marion Stokes was a Philadelphia woman who began taping whatever was on television back in 1979 and didn't stop until her death in 2012. The 71,000 VHS and Betamax tapes she made are the most complete collection preserving this area of TV. They're currently being digitized in the Internet Archive. Carrie Fisher once told her fans, "No matter how I go, I want it to be reported that I drowned in moonlight, strangled by my own bra." Shia LaBeouf came under heavy fire for plagiarizing his directorial debut back in 2012. When he publicly apologized to the original artist Dan Close, people discovered that Shia's apology itself was plagiarized verbatim off of a Yahoo Answers post from 2010. An 86-year-old wrote an upbeat review for her local paper about a new Olive Garden. She was mercilessly mocked by the internet. Anthony Bourdain thought she had a valuable point of view on small-town dining, so he published a book of her reviews. Garden Veggie Straws, which shows fresh vegetables on the bag and are promoted as a healthy alternative to chips, are actually made of salt, starch, and tomato paste. They actually have less nutrition than actual potato chips, and the manufacturer, which has a history of false claims, is now being sued. A Harvard study showed that hiring one highly productive toxic worker does more damage to a company's bottom line than employing several less productive but cooperative workers. Jimmy Carter is the longest lived president, the longest retired president, the first president to live 40 years after their inauguration, and the first to reach the age of 95. After being scolded by a woman who felt that his shoes were too expensive for kids, Shaq forewent $40 million with a deal with Reebok and signed one with Walmart instead. He then brought in designers from Reebok so that his Walmart shoes could look costlier than the $20 price. Over 400 million pairs were sold. Persian King Aga Muhammad Khan ordered the execution of 2 servants for being too loud. Since it was a holy day, he postponed their execution by 1 day and made the servants return to their duties. They murdered the king in his sleep that night. In 1998, Sony had a chance to buy the rights to almost every Marvel character for just $25 million. They opted to only buy the rights to Spider-Man for just $7 million, stating nobody gives a S-word about the other Marvel characters. The crew of Return of the Jedi mocked the character design of Admiral Akbar, deeming it too ugly. Director Richard Marquand refused to alter it, saying, "I think it's good to tell kids that good people aren't necessarily good-looking people, and that bad people aren't necessarily ugly people." The FBI and CIA recruit heavily from the Mormon population because they're usually cheaper to do a security clearance on, they often speak other languages from their mission trips, and they usually have a low-risk lifestyle. Apes don't ask questions. While apes can learn sign language and communicate using it, they have never attempted to learn new knowledge by asking humans or other apes. They don't seem to realize that other entities can know things that they don't. It's a concept that separates mankind from apes. Rome has major struggles with expanding the subway system in the city because diggers keep running into major archaeological finds. The Metro C expansion has been in the works for the past 40 years and has unearthed Hadrian's Athenaeum, a military complex, and an amphitheater. In 2007, Rockstar Games allowed fans to call a number and rant about what they thought was wrong with America. The best calls were featured on a radio station in Grand Theft Auto 4. In the 1950s, donut shops were the first food businesses commonly opened late at night. They became hotspots for police working the night shift since it gave them a place to grab a snack, fill out paperwork, or even just take a break. This is why donuts became associated with police. The founder of Hyundai was born to an impoverished family of peasants in what is now North Korea. In 1998, he sent 1,001 cows to his hometown in North Korea as a repayment 1,000 times over for a cow that he stole in the early 1930s to afford his train ticket to Seoul and escape from poverty. Dogs get sprayed by skunks so often because skunks lift their tails as a warning, but dogs see this as a "come smell my butt" offer, which is the exact opposite message from what the skunk is trying to send. Five Guys purposely gives extra fries at the bottom of the bag. They do it so that guests think that they're getting a good deal. However, the extra fries are already factored into the menu price. Founder Jerry Morrell also says it's better for customers to feel that their serving of fries was too large. In Forrest Gump, when the microphone is cut off at the rally, what you don't hear him say is
That's all I have to say about that.
Gordon Ramsay set up a business inside a London prison that taught inmates how to bake and sold the goods on the outside, providing the prison with financial support while giving the inmates work experience they could use to find honest work after their sentence. The creators of Parks and Recreation did research for the show by interviewing actual government officials. One said, "Well, I'm a libertarian, so I don't really believe in the mission of my job. Yes, I'm aware of the irony." And thus, the character of Ron Swanson was born. Fish eggs can survive and hatch after passing through a duct, providing one explanation of how seemingly pristine, isolated bodies of water can become stocked with fish. Quack. Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder once cut down trees along the Potomac River so that he could see it from his house. The trees were located in a national park, and a ranger who raised concerns about the issue was raided by U.S. Marshals. The Hawaiian island of Kauai encourages tourists to check a dog out of shelters for a day as part of a field trip for dogs program. Having the dogs out and about gives them exercise and increases their chances of getting adopted by a local. After Martin Luther King was killed in 1968, his funeral was held at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and a small group of current students were chosen to be ushers for his funeral. One of those ushers was Samuel L. Jackson. Mario Puzo, the author of the Godfather books, who'd also adapted them to film, had no idea what he was doing as he'd never written a screenplay before. After winning 2 Oscars, he decided to buy a book on screenwriting to learn how. In the first chapter, it said, "Study Godfather 1." The Make-A-Wish Foundation granted a child to visit the set of Thor Ragnarok. When Thor sees Hulk enter the arena on Sakaar, the child said Thor should say, "He's a friend from work." Gary Gygax's wife was convinced he was having an affair, so she followed him to a dimly lit basement and burst into the room only to find him and his friends hunched over hand-drawn maps. Gary would go on to invent the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. Max Planck was told by his professor to not go into physics because almost everything is already discovered. Planck said he didn't want to discover anything, just learn the fundamentals. He went on to originate quantum theory and win a Nobel Prize. Samuel L. Jackson heard someone repeating his Ezekiel 25:17 speech to him, and he turned to discover that it was Marlon Brando who gave him his number. When Jackson called, it was a Chinese restaurant, but when he asked for Brando, he picked up. It was Brando's way of screening calls. In 1836, a sewer worker accidentally discovered an old drain which ran directly into the Bank of England's gold vault. He wrote letters to the directors of the bank and requested a meeting inside the vault at an hour of their choosing. He popped out of the floor to greet them. After Beethoven went deaf, he found he could affix a metal rod to his piano and bite down on it while he played. This enabled him to hear perfectly through vibrations in his jawbone. The process is called bone conduction. Mythbusters once tested a combination of common materials that made an extremely powerful explosive, but they deleted the tapes and swore to never release the information, then contacted DARPA and warned them about the possibility of misuse of the combinations. And as always, skibbity bop bop a doo bop a skibble dibble doo, yeah! Bye now. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and an extra special thank you to my channel members. Don't forget there are clickable cards that you can click on screen right now if you want to watch some more content from me, including a bloopers reel, which is exclusive to channel members. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Love you guys.